Halloween 2 is directed by Rick Rosenthal and stars Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasence, and Dick Warlock as Michael Myers. The film follows Donald Pleasence's Dr. Samuel Loomis, who is still after Michael Myers after the events of the first film, all taking place within the same night. Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode is taken to the Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, where she will get the best treatment and health care ever from some of the worst group of nurses and doctors I've seen in a horror film in quite a while that leave her alone, all while a killer is out there on the loose looking for her. And that killer happens to be Michael Myers. This is a fan favorite sequel for a lot of people. For one, it has the cinematographer from the original film, Dean Cundey, coming back to shoot the film, and because of that, the atmosphere, the entire look and feel of the movie is so authentic to the first movie that this almost at times feels like a second part to the first movie that we have not seen before. And that is one of the biggest praises I could give this movie, is that the look and feel of the film is so authentic to the first movie that you can definitely watch these two together as really good companion pieces. And they both feel like a complete story overarching from one movie to the next. It's a really fun duology of movies where one is definitely better, but the other one is still pretty fun. And that's how I would describe Halloween 2. It is a fun horror slasher film of the 80s, and definitely one of the better sequels, and at the time, the best sequel we've gotten. John Carpenter came back to write the story, but wasn't interested in directing as he felt like the story concluded very well with the first movie. But I think overall, his exaggeration of his hate of this movie is, like, as I said, exaggerated. I think this second movie actually did a few things pretty good. For one, the portrayal of Myers is pretty much still intact from the first movie, though the performance is a little bit more robotic than Nick Castle's performance. I think Dick Warlock tried to go for something a bit more different, but I would have preferred if he tried to stay close to the Nick Castle performance just for continuity's sake. And mostly that kind of robotic performance and the way he walks is not my favorite kind of Myers, but he's still really creepy, intense when he needs to be, and all around dangerous when he has to be. Myers is still a force of nature to be reckoned with, and the portrayal here is still very good. Donald Pleasence once again gives a really good performance, though he does have a little bit less to do. He is more so trying to investigate a murder and trying to figure out what Myers is doing. And a lot of that is him just standing there talking about the blackest eyes of pure evil that we all know. It wasn't until the later half of the movie where we see him able to do more stuff, trying to be more active, trying to go after Myers more. And that is kind of the Loomis I want to see more of. As for Jamie Lee Curtis's Laurie Strode, she spends most of her time in a hospital bed doing nothing until she has to be chased down by Myers in the third act of the movie, which is kind of disappointing because she is the main character of the first film. She's the one that we all grown attached to and that we care for. So because of that, we still don't want anything bad to happen to her. But the fact that she's given less to do here kind of shows that this sequel came out at a time where character writing is not as important as a bunch of gory kills. After the success of the first Halloween, John Carpenter wanted to emulate the success of other horror franchises that spawned out of the success of Halloween. And those horror movies happen to be a bit more gorier than Halloween, like Friday the 13th. And he wanted to imply some of that to the sequel. So he reshot a bit of the film without Rick Rosenthal. He reshot the scenes himself where he added a bunch of gore and a much brutal kill count to the movie. I will say that the kills here are definitely not as gratuitous or as bloody as some of the other horror sequels that came out at the time. I've seen a lot more bloodier than this movie. but you can definitely tell that this is trying to be a bit more violent than the first movie, and that kind of holds it back. One of the things that I loved about the first movie is how it kept the suspense up to a high and the blood to a minimum. Did not need gratuitous blood or gore to make the movie scary. It just went at it with suspense alone and the creepiness of Michael Myers just standing there watching his victims like a hawk. That is some of the scariest stuff in the entire movie. Here, you see Michael Myers a whole lot more, though there are a few good suspense sequences with him too still intact here. But all in all, this is definitely trying to be a lot more violent. And sometimes it's out of character in Michael, and sometimes it is in character in Michael. I don't know, I'm half and half on this. Like, some of the violence did not really bother me, but at the same time, it definitely would have been better if it was less violent and more suspense-filled. As I said before, the cinematography and look of the film is great. The atmosphere feels definitely a lot like the first movie. And the directing by Rick Rosenthal is real steady. I love the way he was able to direct this film almost the same way as John Carpenter would have done so back in the first movie. Though there are a lot of characters here that are just there for the body count. And while some of them are entertaining, some of them could definitely fade into the background and you could definitely forget about them. And that leads to a few pacing issues where the movie does drag at times and you're just waiting for it to get to the point. But my biggest problem with this film is that it introduced a major twist that will affect the entire series up until Halloween 2018. And that is that Laurie Strode is Michael Myers' sister. This is revealed by a few characters and in the flashback that Laurie Strode had, and it hinted toward Michael being related to Laurie in some way in her past, and then the nurse from the previous film came in and revealed that she is his sister, and it gave Michael's motivation to try and kill her. And I don't hate the idea as much as other people, but I do prefer that Michael Myers stay as the boogeyman, an emotionless, motiveless killer that just does what he does just because he is pure evil. That's what made him scary in the first movie, and is what made him scary again in the newer films. He's just a motiveless killer that's just out there to try and kill as many people as he can on Halloween just because he is pure evil. And I felt like this movie lost that by trying to do that twist, and that is due to John Carpenter having a moment of writer's block, and you can definitely tell that in the screenplay. Like, the screenplay of this film is the biggest problem. It added too much gore to some of these scenes. It tried to add a twist to spicing up the movie, but it could have been just a simple suspense story of Michael trying to stalk Laurie in a hospital or so, or focus on a different character. Because you have Michael as a motiveless killer, and he's the major draw of the film, you could just have him and have Dr. Loomis try to chase him again. You could focus on another group of teenagers and have the story be a lot more focused in that way. Other than that, this film still ties everything together pretty well and ends on a pretty satisfactory note, at least for this timeline of Halloween movies. I mean, they want to try and do other stuff later on, but it did not work and they had to go back to Michael Myers. But as for these two movies, as standalone pieces together, I still think Halloween 2 has a lot going for it. It has a lot of good scares and suspense and kills here that are pretty fun. It has a continuous layer of atmosphere from the first film. The cinematography is beautiful and I love the way it was shot. The directing by Rick Rosenthal is really strong here. The performances are all really good, even though the characters are a little bit lacking from the first movie. The performance and portrayal of Michael Myers here is just as fun as ever. So there's still a lot of fun to be had with Halloween 2. This is definitely one of my more preferred sequels out of the Halloween franchise. Though I will say that there are definitely a lot more problems than I really care to admit back in the day. Like, I really rated this movie high, but This movie is flawed and you can tell, but still an overall enjoyable sequel. I'm gonna give Halloween 2 a B. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and I'll see you guys next time.